welcome to the Communication Workshop. I'm Abby Wick. I'm the NDSU Extension Soil Health Specialist. So I work primarily with farmers, with other educators, including our county agents and our CS organizations, anyone that brings information out to people that are going to put it on the ground. So that's my role at NDSU.
My name is Tim Hamrich. I work in communications consulting. I have been hosting the Soil Sense podcast along with Abby for the last over a year now, almost 2 years going on for that podcast, and I've been in communications for several years.
When you can't meet in person, how do you make the most of it online? We brought in Peter Schott and Marisol Berti for this discussion, and we'll have you introduce yourselves, but I want to say Peter and I met actually just on Twitter. And when I was struggling with some of these online things and Zoom, I had never really done it before, Peter messaged me and said, I can help you with that. And I was like, well, could you do a workshop? and that's how that happens. But Marisol has also been doing a lot of this with her classes and trying to do engaging students in these conversations. So we'll start out with some introduction. Peter, can you start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Peter. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Genesis Feed Technologies. We help people around the world with marketing ingredients like soy and soybean meal. So hoping to help farmers in this area get a better price for their crops. I grew up on a family farm about 2 hours southwest of here in Cullum, North Dakota. It was fun to see Lee on the previous panel. He's the agronomist for my dad and brother's farm, and I hardly recognize him when he's not sitting on a four-wheeler with a bandana out in the middle of a field. So it's kind of fun to see him today. I've worked professionally the last 14 years in remote environments on virtual teams, and so I've got a lot of experience using different technology tools and things to communicate with people in an authentic way. So excited to be here. And fun fact, I also met Tim via Twitter and was a guest on his podcast a while back too. So it's good to be here with both of you.
Awesome. Well, let's go to Marisol and have her do an introduction.
Well, hi everyone, and thanks for inviting me to this. I was a little nervous, I'm just a professor, but I'm from the Department of Plant Science at North Dakota State University. I work on forages and cover crops production research. I was just doing my own research, and then I met Abby, and I realized the importance of talking to the farmers, and I love it because it's the only way whatever I do in research goes out. And so I'm really happy to be here. I don't know how much I can help, but my 25 years of teaching experience, and now this year we had to go to the high flex. So I think I have a few months of have to learn how to do labs online, to do classes online, and be able to get all the students engaged on this new system. I think I had a little bit of experience that it might help in the future for extension too.
I'm so glad that you guys both are here because I think it offers two totally different perspectives on how we're going to do this online. And you both have more experience than I do, which is great. And then hearing that connection too, I forgot that Peter knew you from when you were out here doing the stories from the soil.
Yeah, it's fun to watch Peter on Twitter. You'll see him say, well, this morning I had a meeting in China, and then a meeting in Indonesia, and then a meeting in West Africa, and he is virtual all over the globe. And so I'm excited to hear more from him.
Perfect. Well, let's, Peter, you put together a little PowerPoint to kind of give us some of those tools. You call it Zoom for the Rest of Us, which I think is a great title. Do you want to go through those a little bit and kind of share some of the things that you've learned that when I looked through it, there were things that I didn't know you could do on Zoom. So maybe we'll start with that.
Yeah, and so from what I understand, there's over 600 people signed up for this today. And so it's really hard to kind of gauge what level people are at with Zoom or expertise on these different things. And so I'm of the mantra of keep things simple and basic. And so I try to just stick with a few points. So if this is stuff you already knew, I apologize for that. But if there's things that you learned, I hope to, hear some of that too, or questions or things you don't want to dive into. And hopefully you can get a copy of the presentation because there are links to, different things that you can look at with this. So the main thing with Zoom is just understand it's just a tool. Okay, it's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to, you can use it however you want to. And, whether you're doing a meeting in person or on Zoom, there's just some really basic tips that I think you can do to make a meeting successful. And so don't just think just because you're using a tool like Zoom that you don't have to make things interactive. And so if that's one thing I can really drive home today is find ways to make Zoom interactive. and make it interactive for you with all the different options that are there. And so with that, I picked a couple things that I've really liked or enjoyed from pieces that I've worked with in the past, and you may have experienced those as well in meetings that you've done. So there's breakout rooms. There's ways you can look at reactions. Probably one of my favorite things in Zoom that I use all the time when I'm doing those calls overseas is the Annotate piece. And nothing is better than having a good partner in crime or a co-host. You notice there's two people sitting on stage running the meeting. Today here, having a co-host can be really helpful for you as well. So if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. There's a whole bunch of things that you could talk about with breakout rooms and things to do with it. We could do a whole presentation just on that, but I would highly encourage you to look at breakout rooms and look at that Zoom article or just other examples of how to do that. What a breakout room does is you can divide people into a specified number, and it can randomly put people into groups for discussions with time limits, which can be really great. So you can have kind of a main presentation and then pull back to a room to have people talk about specific questions. And I've been on a number of calls where this has worked really well, where the facilitator really spoke to what the topics were going to be in that breakout room and the takeaways back. Zoom has also added features in where there's timers for when the breakout time is ending. Because nothing's more awkward than getting a message from the host saying your Zoom breakout is going to end in a little bit, and then you have this awkward 30 seconds of time where you're just sitting there staring at each other. So having that timer in a piece like that, so you kind of know when it's going to end, can be helpful. If you are going to use breakout rooms, I would also recommend that you practice it a few times ahead of time just to get used to the transitions and pieces. So just like any good speech or presentation, just be prepared. If you go to the next slide, please. So what's your reaction? I really like using these reaction pieces as well. Depending on your meeting settings, when you can look at your participant list, and there will be those little buttons down below with that on the presenter list for it. And so this is a great thing where you can get feedback from people. You can also have an option down at the bottom of the Zoom menu to have reactions for people to raise their hand or do a thumbs up or different things. If you are going to use these tools, I would recommend having a time specifically at the beginning of the meeting, or having a handout that you send ahead of time, which I didn't put that on the presentation, but I think having a one-page handout on what to expect in a Zoom meeting. I got one of those the other day for something that I was in, and it's really helpful for people if you've never used Zoom or don't know what to expect. You can give them all some similar information ahead of time so they're ready. And if you do plan on using these reactions, I would include that on it, and then also have people do a test of it. Maybe have them click the yes or click the no, just to make sure people are using that. So those can be really great ways to just keep an eye on that. So, and you'll notice here in this example, myself as being the host of my meeting, I click the go slower, and then you can see it will go slower next to the mute on the side. So that's where that'll show up. It'll be under the attendee list for you, and then you can keep an eye on those over there. Next slide, please. So annotate, there's all these different tools that you can use. And again, this is just kind of a main link for it. So if you go to the next slide, there is a whole bunch of different things that you can use with this. And the ones that I'm highlighting here today are the draw and the spotlight. So when I click on the draw on the left side, there's all sorts of options there. You can draw different types of lines, arrows. I use those rectangles quite a bit, or the squares, just to call things out on the screen when I'm doing presentations. So it'll create those drawings. So you'll notice on the little picture to the right of that, I took a shaded square and moved it over a piece on my screen. So it was a great way to call attention to that. And then I also used a stamp of an arrow to make a blue arrow pointing to the text piece of it. Those are really good ways to get people's focus on certain spots of the screen. If you're doing a demonstration, you just really want to call something out to do that. And then you'll notice on the right of those undo, redo buttons, there's a trash can to clear. You can clear out all your drawings with that. But yes?
Quick question on that. So if people are looking at their screen and they say, I don't see any of this, is this a special premium Zoom that you have to get, or a special add-on tool, or is it just because that they're not the host that they don't see this?
They should be able to see all the drawings on a screen. If you're sharing your screen, everyone that's in your meeting will be able to see it.
Okay.
So you don't need any sort of special Zoom to be able to see the drawings.
And we did have a question
that.
about specifically about the what's your reaction function. They couldn't find that, the what's your reaction function. Is that on the toolbar as well?
Yeah, it might be disabled in the meeting that we have set up here today. It's a thing when you're doing your setup for your meeting, you can allow people to use those tools or not. But we're not able to see the attendee list. So maybe you as presenters would likely see it, but the rest of the audience isn't going to. And it looks like in this meeting, the option to share the reactions isn't available here today, but it is something that you can enable when you're doing your meeting security.
Oh, I just got a note that it's because we're in webinar function. So that would be why. So for everybody, if you're not seeing this, that's probably why, because we're in the webinar function, not the meeting function.
Yeah. So I found they're just really good tools to, Marisol is going to share some other really good things to make things more interactive with that piece, but these are just real quick things in Zoom that you can use just to get a pulse on where things are at. So the other piece is under Annotate, there is a spotlight, and what that does, it's like a virtual laser pointer, and so that will turn your mouse clicker into a red laser point on your screen. And for me, for the past 13, 14 years, I've done virtual work and screen sharing with people, and I can't tell you how many times I've had to say, can you look at the top left of the screen? No, over there, up a little, no, to the left, right, no, down, no, right there. And with that laser pointer, you don't have to do that. It just calls everyone's attention to one spot, and they're able to just draw right into it. So that's a very good tool for when you're demonstrating and you want people to view specific things. Having a co-host is invaluable. Number one, just if you're presenting and if you're sharing a screen, especially if you want to keep an eye on those reactions, or if you want to keep an eye on the chat or the Q&A, it's really difficult to do that when you're busy presenting. There's just so many things that would pop up and be so distracting for you. So to have someone along the line that can do those things for you. Now they can either be like a specific co-host of the meeting or someone that just has access to those functions within it. There's a lot of information about what does it mean to be a co-host and what are the things that you can do and what you can't do with it. And so going to that link is a good place to look really specifically at those, but having someone else along to monitor the chat and the Q&A and that to call things up really can help things be interactive, especially when you're sharing your screen.
Oh, super helpful. Those are all things that I didn't know how to do on Zoom, because literally when March hit and they're like, you're gonna have to use Zoom, I was like, I don't even have an account. I don't know how to set it up. I don't even know how to do a meeting. And I think Peter probably saw that freak out on Twitter, which is why he offered to help. So thank you for sharing your dozen years of experience in this. And hopefully we can all use Zoom, like you said, as a tool, not as the end all be all, but as part of our package for how we're going to deliver information. I think that's pretty critical. So now, Marisol, you've been engaging and having the group in the 18 to 21-year-old range and keeping them engaged for courses where they likely are attending them from their living room. And I'd like to turn it over to you to find out how you've been engaging or what tools you're using to keep people paying attention and listening when all of us could be on our cell phone at the same time we're on a Zoom meeting, or we could be doing a million other things. How do you keep people engaged, or what are some of the tricks that you're using?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Peter, for all the information, because I use all those tools too. And thanks, Abby. It's been a learning curve with the students since we started in September. Never done this. And, we have a high flex system. That means we have students in the classroom and students in Zoom. We started with maybe 60% of the class in the classroom. And now today I have 2 students in the classroom and everyone else in Zoom. So it's been evolving to get it. Now, my class is at 8 a.m. So my big challenge is to have the students awake, because they don't do it from the living room. They do the class from bed, from their bedroom, still in bed, as that's what's happened. And I use different tools and I try to change them so they kind of don't get to use. And I think one thing is important too is give some incentives for doing stuff, because that helps them engage, especially students that they're going to get a grade for this class. I know in extension you don't get that, but there's ways to get some incentives so people get excited about participating, right? And I use the Zoom tools that Peter just showed, the Annotate functions, and all these functions are really fun. I use them not only with the students in the classroom, but with advisees, to register for classes. So it's really nice because I can share their, registration page, and I can mark and say, look here, and put the highlighter and stuff like that, or write things over. And I use it in my class too. Although in my class, I had to, you have the choice too. I had to close the Annotate function, disable it, because some students were just crossing my slides, just putting funny stuff. And I said, okay, we're not gonna do that today. But that's what they are. But different things, and there's other tools. I know in Zoom, you also have the possibility of polling people, which kind of is an icebreaker. If you're showing a PowerPoint, I know Lee was talking about, PowerPoints in the long time are boring, right? And I've been using PowerPoints for like 20 plus years. I got the bias of a professor, sorry. But I think PowerPoints are useful if they're used together with other technologies like Zoom, or I use another one called Turning Point Technologies. Unfortunately, because of this is a webinar system, I cannot use it or share it, but I'll explain a little bit. And there are different vendors of different other technologies that you can add to Zoom. So you can use everything Peter said, but then you can still have a PowerPoint, and they use these tools for polling. In Zoom, you can poll people, but mainly with really simple questions like multiple choice. The advantages of these other systems that I use in my class is that I can use all different types of questions, including word clouds. I can even make the students compete, for different, whose team or group in my lab gets the most points on a set of questions and stuff like that. And that really engages them. Another thing is important with students, and I do that, and I've done it with other meetings too. If you have a meeting with farmers or you're trying to engage people, you need to ask them to have the camera on. I've been in so many meetings with everyone has the camera off, and then you ask a question and the person's not even there, they're not even listening, they're doing something else. And so if you're gonna have a meeting, this is like if it was a face-to-face, you are gonna look at people. So make them have the camera on, so they're there. Otherwise they're, listening. And I think I'm a visual learner. I think a lot of people are. And like Lee, he's a great storyteller. I'm not that a great storyteller. And some people lose attention very quickly when it's just somebody talking. But when you have some visual aids like PowerPoint, just a few, not too many, it helps the people to engage. And especially if you put some questions in between, like that's what I do in my class. I have these turning point questions embedded on my presentation at random. So it already, all the time the question comes. And what is really neat about this system, students can answer from anywhere they are, and anyone could, like if in this system I could make you do it, everyone is in this meeting could answer to me. The only thing we're not doing is because you couldn't see the answers and it would be boring for you. I would see them, but you wouldn't. But
Marisol, can I ask you a question real quick? So in a time where we feel like we're almost asking farmers to do a little bit too much technology. I mean, we know they can run all this massive high technology equipment, and tractors and combines and things like that. But when it comes to Zoom, sometimes it's challenging. And so how easy is Turning Point or one of those programs or polling in Zoom, how easy is that to actually engage the audience, or does it make them nervous?
I learned myself, it's super easy. Well, here at NDSU, the students have this tool because the university has a license, but you can have this as an extension person, and all the farmers have to do is write something called ttpoll.com, and then you give them an ID code and they join all your questions, and everything you put in there, they'll be able to see. And so it's super simple. You don't have to load an app. You don't have to do anything. You're just gonna type a website, and it'll put a bar where you put the code of the meeting you're in, and that's it. And then you'll be able to see all the questions and all the participation things. The good thing of these technologies too is they do collect a lot of data. And I know Jean is going to talk about collecting usable knowledge, right? And so they allow you to save all that information. It can be anonymous. You don't need to know which farmer answered what, but they can really help you to do some stats and see where things are going, what are the main topics, and it all depends how you answer the questions. So I've learned a lot, and I'm still learning a lot. We even did a lot of, my class has a lot of ID labs, and I say, okay, how am I gonna do this online? But actually we can do that, and you can do the things with pictures, with videos. Now the systems allow you to put all that stuff through Zoom, and they're integrated with the rest of the system. And here at NDSU is great because all these turning point and all these question types are integrated with the Blackboard, which is our grading system. So if I assign points, which I do for answering questions because that keeps the students awake, they don't answer the question, they don't get the point. So they're bonus points for the class. So it's an incentive for them to be answering the question. And I don't care if the answer is right or wrong. That's not the point. The point is to keep them participating, right? And I do breakout room too, and so they have to do things in group, and so that really that's really helped to keep the class going, without them fall asleep halfway.
So we're getting some questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and I was wondering if at some moment today, Marisol, you could put some of those links that you were talking about in the chat so that people can see them and learn more about those programs. I do also want to mention, and we're going to talk about this later today, is that we are going to have some follow-up webinars in January and February. So some of these specific questions on how do you do a poll, how do you use Turning Point, we can answer those in January and February during an hour-long or 2-hour-long segment to try to get some of those specifics addressed. But I think the major overview of what we're seeing here today is that Peter brought up some great tools that you can use as you're hosting a Zoom meeting, and Marisol has brought in some additional tools that you can add to those meetings to make them a little more interactive. Is that kind of what you're picking up too, Pete, or
yeah,
Tim?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious for Peter, Marisol mentioned using polls and surveys, and I could see in a classroom context where that would be really important. Have you found that also helpful in more of your business meetings or presentations? Have you been able to use that?
Yeah, and I use a tool. There's a lot of tools like Turning Point that she mentioned. I've used one called Slido before for that, and it's really great to have something like that. Number one, it breaks up the monotony of it, so you can get people to kind of participate rather than just listening, and you get real-time feedback on things. So I will use those when I'm doing presentations and things all the time to just kind of gauge where the audience is at or what kind of questions they have, and just as an excuse to kind of keep them awake and engaged in what we're talking about.
You guys think, in your experience, so there's all these tools that are available. What's the number one approach that you would use if you don't use these tools? How do you keep people engaged and in the conversation? Are there things that you can do that don't require some of these tools that are online?
It's as simple as, just asking people and then giving people, and it's like facilitating any sort of a group conversation and just keeping people engaged. Depending on the number in your group, if you can, keep an eye on the names of people that are there and get a feel for who's willing to be interactive and who's more of the quiet, sit back and wait, and just kind of use your group facilitation senses of maybe calling out, Abby, what do you think about this one? Or plan some questions in the audience, or have people there that are going to ask that first question. I do presentations online for the Soybean Export Council, and one of our little secrets is, we plant a few questions to get things started with it, because nobody wants to be the first person to ask. So don't be shy about planting a few questions in the audience to get things going as well. So do little things like that where you don't need a tool to do that. It's just keeping your audience engaged.
Marisol, we have another question for you that came up on whether you plan to continue some form of online for your classes. So say we get to be face-to-face again, 100%. Are you going to keep doing this online, or do you think that you're going to?
No, but I think all these, well, for now, we probably will continue in the spring with the same system. But I think we've opened up to opportunities that we didn't know we had. So before in the past, if a student was sick, he would just miss the lab, right? Now I know that I have this possibility of engaging them, whether they can be here or not for any reason. Doesn't have to be the COVID now, but I think I'm gonna continue using these. Also, I spent tons of time, scanning all my materials for ID. And so now I have all these sets made, especially for online. And we did some really neat things that, the students could not come to some of the labs. We actually sent samples to their house so they could participate in the lab live while we're connected to the lab, the students that were on the lab. And that worked really nice because they were working with, they were doing their own sample at home with the other students they're doing it on the lab. So I think there's a lot of things now that it's going to help me to include people that otherwise couldn't be there. There's different reasons in other years people cannot be there, right? They have a funeral, they have to be away. There's many reasons. And those students, we had to do a makeup test or a makeup lab. So I don't have to do that now. So I think I'll keep using this technology. I think it has a lot of advantages. Another advantages that I never had is my class, I never got more than 60% attendance to the lecture. With the Zoom system, I got 80 to 100% attendance to my lecture, which I never did in 10 years. So I think we have to look at the positive things that this system has brought us. And I think a lot of this can use, and this workshop is an example, right? If we would have done a live meeting, we wouldn't have all the people we have, right, Abby? And we know we prefer people. I do too. I'm a hugger. I'm a touch, people, and I want to be there. But this is really good because we can reach out to people that otherwise wouldn't be here.
You're definitely showing that, NDSU has asked their faculty to do this hybrid model. So you're still doing the face-to-face and you're also doing the online. And I know it's an enormous amount of work, but I think that's where we're all going to be here in the future. I'm not sure that we'll ever just go back to face-to-face and that's it. I think there will always be some kind of online hybrid component. So, so that's probably a good thing.
It is. Yeah, and Peter, for you, I imagine you'd be traveling around the world a lot more. So are you able to kind of get more done by using more virtual events?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we're able to, like you said earlier, there's literally days where I'll start off in Morocco and then go to Indonesia and then to Peru. I mean, there'd be no way I could do that in a day. It doesn't replace the face-to-face meetings, but for some things, it makes it much more effective and efficient to do it that way.
You're leaving out one tip, which is you could just spray paint your notes on your wall there.
Yeah, exactly.